Because it is just a few days before the holiday of Pesach, there are certain prayers that we omit and substitute them with others. But nevertheless, it is still from Psalms. Michtam le David, Shomrini el kechasiti bach, Amart Adonai Adonai ata tovati bar alecha lekdushim asher ba'aretz hema v'adirei kol chivtzivam. Irbu atzevotam acher maharu barasich nizkehem midam ubalesa et shmotam asfatai Adonai menat chelki v'kosi ata tomech gorali. Chavalim naflu li b'ne'emim av nachalat shafra alai avarech et Adonai asher yatzani af lilot yisiruni kiryotai shiviti Adonai linigdi tamid kimimini balemot. לכן שמח ליבי ויגל כבודי, אף בשרי ישכון לבטח, כי לא תעזור נפשי לשאול, לא תיתן חסיתך לראות שחת. תודיעני אור החיים, שובע שמחות את פניך, נעימות בימינך נצח. Olga, Harry and Moti, Sharon, and Michael, Susan, and grandchildren, Seth, Samara, and Lisa, Jordana, Eric, and grandchildren, great-grandchildren, Jacob, Benjamin, and Maya, and of course, his beloved sister, Sylvia. My dear friends and family, we are here today to mourn the passing of a great, outstanding individual, a wonderful husband, a loving father, a grandfather who is and was unique, and a great-grandfather who was so proud of his great-grandchildren, grandchildren, children, and family. Tzvi Aharon ben Zechariah alav hashalom. He was a man of principle. He was a man of kindness. He was a man who had a good heart, a lev tov. There is a disagreement in the Mishnah of Perkei Avot, Ethics of the Fathers, who mentions that let's try to analyze what would be the best characteristic trait of a person. One says perhaps someone who's just generous. One says perhaps the one who cares. The third one, he says lev tov. That's it, a good heart. The teacher of all of them got up and said, the lev tov encompasses everything. When a person is generous, when the person is compassionate, when the person is loving and understanding and giving, that is lev tov. That personifies a good heart, a person who cares, a person who is a people person. It's not me about, but it's about you. I want to do things for you. I want to make you happy. That was Harold. I've known him as Herschel. The Torah says when Sarah, the wife of Avraham Avinu, Abraham, passed away, Avraham Avinu was away. So he came, as the Torah says, Vayavo Avraham, and Avraham came, lispod leSarah, to eulogize Sarah, velifkosa, and to cry over her. And there is a very simple logic question. why is it that the Torah is actually being redundant? Or is it? When you eulogize a person, you cry over the person, over your loss. And therefore, why repeat itself twice? It is extremely important for us to understand, dear family and friends, that we have to stand before God, us, the living, and make a presentation to the Almighty to accept Herschel as a tzaddik, as a righteous person. And therefore, in order for us to make that presentation, we have to show it. We are in court right now. We have to see that, to make sure that Hashem receives him and greets him and puts his neshama with the righteous neshamos, with all the good souls of the tzaddikim, of the righteous people. So therefore, it is very important. What Avraham Avinu did was, he came to eulogize, to say how great she was, how much she accomplished during her lifetime, and then v'liv kosa, and then to cry over his loss. This is what I will attempt to do. Herschel was born in Brooklyn, New York, in 1925. His father passed away when Herschel was just 5 years old. A short time later, he moved together with his mom and his sister, Sylvia, to Cleveland to live with their grandparents. From that point on, Herschel started to, in early age, understand his responsibilities. He told me many times, many stories about what his grandfather did for him. How he used to walk to shul on Shabbos with his grandfather. And he used to stop on the way to tell him stories and teach him about this and that, about certain places in Cleveland. He went on to graduate from Glenville High and enlisted in the Army. I'm sorry, in the Navy, right, because I am thinking of Bernie Hollander. They were both practically brothers, and I will explain to you why. Herschel went to the Navy, and Bernie went to the Army. They were both heroes as far as I'm concerned. But that heroism didn't stop after the military service. When they came back, they made sure they attached themselves to a community. They were members. Herschel was a member of Ohev Tzedek Tillerot Synagogue for 88 years. Imagine that, my friends. 88 years. He was Mr. Tillerot Synagogue. He loved the synagogue. He worked very hard for the synagogue. It was not just his love for his family that was extraordinary, that was outstanding, that was so compassionate and loving. He was a true person in his kindness and his truth. How many times he had the ability and the possibility to hit back, especially during those famous board meetings. He always kept his mouth closed. Not that he was shy. He did not want to say anything negative. So therefore he kept quiet. He was a person, as I mentioned before, with principles. He knew what had to be done. Let me give you an example. When he came back from the service, he was in floor covering. He was an apprentice. And he learned the trade to the point where he excelled, and he invented his own design and creativity. And he opened up his own business. Not long ago, over at Taylor Road Synagogue, in the chapel, we installed a new floor. And the new floor was installed by his son-in-law, Moti. But his father-in-law says, just a minute. Not that simple. He had to come up with a design, a matching color, on the floor and on the stage, with different colors, different carpets, in order to make it attractive and beautiful. That was Harold. You don't just do things. You do things with creativity, with sensitivity, with love, with understanding. And he was saying, this is a shul. You don't just throw things together. And Moti, of course, worked with him together because he understood, and I'm sure he learned a lot from him. The same thing with the Aron Kodesh. It was refurbished. It was not the way the Aron Kodesh should be in the chapel. But he asked his son-in-law, Michael, who's cabinet maker, to refurbish it. And he was standing there telling him what to do and how to do it. Not because I know better than you. That wasn't the case. He was a very modest person, because he wanted the most beautiful things for the shul. And the reason for that is because he wanted the most beautiful things for the others, for his family, for his people, for his congregation, not him. He hated a thank you. He absolutely did not let me thank him in the synagogue. I wanted to have a dinner in his honor, and an honor for Bernie Hollander as well. But he absolutely fought me. He did not want to. He said, let Hashem thank me. Hashem is thanking him right now. I remember when he used to go from neighborhood to neighborhood to pick up his friends, the members of Torah Synagogue, to come for a Mincha Mariv. And he always had, I think, 3 or 4 or 5 people in the car. And never complained about it. He did it for a long time. When he came into the synagogue, he came in with a smile, with a joke, and he came in happy. He brought in $500,000. When he was ill, and I used to call him up or go visit him at a hospital or a nursing home, the first thing out of his mouth was, did you have $1 million today? Is everything okay? Isn't that an extraordinary neshama? This is the kind of people that uphold the Torah, which he loved so much. He loved Israel. When he was planning to go with his family to Israel, he was planning for months before his trip. And he was asking me about the details and how do I do this and how do I do that. He planned it and he did it and he went. He was there for a few weeks and he came back with a big smile. He says, I love that country. I want to go back. He was a person who absolutely adored his wife. He would do anything for his wife. Until today, I really remember his face at the shul after davening when we sat down for breakfast and a short lesson in halacha. He asked me questions. He said, my wife Olga said, is this right? But he said it in such a respectful way, such a nice and kind way. He spoke about his children. He's worried about his daughters. They work too hard. He was worried about everybody. When he came to his great-grandchildren, he was the happiest person on earth. These were his words. At the hospital when we went to see him the last time, he says to me, Rabbi, Wealthy people may have millions of dollars. My wealth is, and he pointed at his grandchildren, is this. But he said it out of his heart. He said it because he cared. He says, this is my wealth. And it's so true. He meant it, and he said it, and he showed it. Especially at that time when he was there with Olga at the last event, at the last simcha, for the naming of his great-granddaughter. He was sitting there like a king. This is my wealth. That was the left tov. The left tov that encompasses everything on earth. When he came to the meetings to plan an event, schlepping with his walker, and believe me, my friends, every single step was a pain. It took him 3 minutes to get out of the car. He couldn't even lift his leg. I had to help him with it. And up the ramp with his oxygen tank. He never gave up. He wanted to be in that synagogue at that meeting to help. And then he went to his car. He went to Costco to buy for that event, for the synagogue. And he never gave up until it came to a point, unfortunately, when he had to say, enough is enough. He told me, Rabbi, I give up. And he was in pain. He was in great pain. I want to compliment his daughters who cared so much for him, who devoted so much time. And he deserved it. He was the daddy for his children. His grandchildren and his children call him Papi. He was. That's what he was. A beautiful presence, a beautiful man, a loving man, a person who took out of his heart and gave it. And again, not only to his beautiful children, but to the community as well. He didn't discriminate. He loved everybody. He cared for everybody. It's going to be hard. Very difficult. We're going to miss him. Especially in the shul. His cushion is still on his seat. I don't think I'm going to let anybody sit there. At least for a while. To memorize him. I want to leave you with a story that he told me. As I said before, he was in the floor covering, and he was hired by a contractor to do a few houses. The contract was building homes. I don't remember if he said Solon or Mentor, but around there somewhere. And he did it, of course. He did it beautifully, and he completed the jobs, and it was time to get paid. And he says it was dozens of thousands of dollars. And the contractor said, don't have any money. The first time, the second time, the third time, he said, when are you going to pay me? I don't have any money. I don't have any money. But the job is done. So I don't have any money. What are you going to do? He would never sue. He was not that kind of person. So he got into his car and he said, I don't know what to tell my family. I don't know. God help. So he was traveling back home, and he stopped at a traffic light. Right on the side of him was a bus full of children with special needs. And they were laughing, they were singing, they were screaming. And he looked at him and he says, "What am I upset about? Look at those beautiful children. They all have a problem, and they're happy, and they're singing, and they're moving, and they're jumping. I should care about the money that this guy owes me?" Just between him and God. And he went home. At the end, he tells me, "Rabbi, I don't remember if I told Olga or not." What difference does it make? He did tell her with his heart, with all the compassion he showed her, with all the beautiful gifts he gave her. He told her the way he raised his children together with you. Olga, they don't make them anymore the way they do, and they did with Herschel. I know you have beautiful memories. And you, specifically, Hetty and Sharon and Susan, I know it's impossible to go and hug him and kiss him and ask him questions and talk to him. But please remember, he is with you. His memories are with you. His lessons are with you. And I know many times he did try to teach you things with his finger like this, very, very quietly, very nicely, with love. And I know you appreciated it. And you learned a lot from him. You're going to come to a point during your lifetime when you're going to be facing a problem. And you're going to ask yourself, what would Daddy do? You know what? The answer will come to you immediately. That's the bracha. That's the bracha that you should never forget. And that you learned a lesson that you have had from your dad, and teach them to your children and grandchildren. Because that was his wealth. He said he didn't care about the millions of dollars. He cared about that. This is what's going to bring him to Gan Eden. Please join me in a prayer. May Hashem greet him, his neshama, and accept him as a tzaddik, as a person who cared for his family, for his community, for his shul. A person who did go through the system of Hebrew school, who learned how to daven, who learned how to care and how to love Torah. May he stand before Hashem as a melitz yosher, as a defendant, a person to defend his beautiful wife and daughters, a person who would defend his family, his grandchildren and his great-grandchildren, a person who would defend his community. And I could see it now, standing before Hashem, worrying about Taylor Road Synagogue. He fought together with Bernie Hollander when, unfortunately, Taylor Road Synagogue went through a very, very bumpy road, when the opposition wanted to close down the doors. He and Bernie Hollander went from door to door to get affidavits signed by members of Taylor Road Synagogue stating that we do not want our synagogue to be closed. In the rain and the cold and in the snow, he didn't care. They got into the car and they went from door to door. I was standing there stupefied. I couldn't believe these two gentlemen were doing this. But this is the heroism for Judaism. This is exactly what personifies Torah. People who cared for others, who gave their health and their money and their wisdom and intelligence for that synagogue, so he would continue on surviving. This is the lesson that I am asking that I am requesting that you learn from. This is the beauty of Herschel Simon. This is what he stood for, what is right, in a kind and a nice way. He didn't have an enemy. He did not have an enemy. Everybody liked him. Even until this morning in shul, somebody told me he was such a nice person, such a kind person. This is the impression that he makes with people. Even people who really didn't know him. He was kind, he was nice. That's all we have to know. That's all we have to know. This is what Tzvi Aharon ben Zechariah alav shalom stood for. It is a tradition, Ashkenaz tradition, that in the days when we do not recite supplication, Tachnun, we don't say the memorial prayer. Okay? So at this point, I'm going to make the announcements with regards to the interment. It would be at Ridge Road Cemetery, number 2, at the Tel Road Synagogue section. The family will observe Shiva at the residence, 2200 Kerwin Road, in the reception room in University Heights, Thursday following the services until 8 p.m. Friday from noon to 2 p.m. Sunday from 2 to 4, and again from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Friends who wish may contribute to Friends of Israel Defense Forces and also to Bikur Cholim. The davening schedule is as follows. It is actually very simple, so you don't have to worry about memorizing it. Shachris is at 7:30. Mincha Maariv 7:45. So it's going to be Friday, Sunday, and Monday morning only. Monday morning only, because it is Erev Pesach.